What every teacher should know about great behaviour management. It almost seems like there is a secret to it, doesn't it? But in fact, it's a combination of things that teacher is able to do that are so subtle that you probably can't even notice them. For instance, it's about being completely clear with your class about what your expectations of behaviour are. If you outline that for them from the beginning, then they know where they stand with you. I think the second thing is a sense of confidence, because that helps you to relax. So a sense that you can be in control of that class, and if something goes wrong, that you are confident enough not to panic and flap. And then I think probably the third thing is, it's a lot to do with verbal and non-verbal communication. So it's to do with your tone of voice, it's to do with the way you use your face, it's to do with movement around the room, and it's to do with that look that you give the kids when they're about to misbehave. Well, when I work with NQTs, I often say to them, in the summer, before you start your first class, practice your first lesson speech. So here's one of the ways in which I might do it. Good morning, everybody. My name's Miss Cowley, and I'm your teacher this year. Aren't you lucky? Now, while you're with me, there are a few things that you need to remember. The first and most important rule is that in our classroom, we have one voice. So that means if I'm talking, you're listening. But if Fred over there is talking, then everybody's listening to Fred. That way, we can all learn from each other. The second rule I have is that you do what you're asked the first time you're asked. I'll only ask you to do things that will help you to learn, so it's really crucial that you do them straight away. And then my third rule is very simple. Always try your best. Put your best effort in, that way you can learn. When you start out in teaching, it can feel like you've lost the class. I remember exactly that feeling about 20-something years ago in my NQT year. I felt like I'd lost the class. I felt like there was no way I'd ever be able to do this. But in fact, after a few talks with my mentor, going to watch how he did it, I learnt that it's not about a natural ability to do it. It's about putting lots and lots of techniques together. And once those become second nature, then anybody pretty much can control a class. If you are completely shy and terrified of children, you probably wouldn't have come into teaching anyway. So let's not worry about that. I think all children behave differently with all their different teachers. And as a parent, I hear my children talking about how they operate for different teachers and why that might be. One of the reasons is that they have different relationships with their different teachers. Just as you and I have different relationships in our adult lives, exactly the same thing applies to children. Something else that's a factor is the subject that you're teaching them. So if you're a peripatetic teacher teaching music in a primary school, the class will probably behave differently to you than for their class teacher. It's also to do with that aura of confidence that you give off. So if you give the sense to the children that you are confident and relaxed and in control, then they respond to that by feeling the same way. Let me tell you a little story about how children can behave. The same children can behave completely differently. So on one of my teaching practices, I was working with a class that had a job share. And I went in to work with them with the first teacher. Now, this first teacher was very loud and bubbly and enthusiastic. And guess what? The children were very loud and bubbly and enthusiastic for her as well. And then I happened to go in on a Thursday one time, and that teacher was very calm, very quiet, very gentle, and it was like I'd come into a different class. So the way that you behave in class will affect the way that your children behave for you. So the first thing that children really, really, really need to know is what behaviour you actually want from them. If you don't tell the children how you want them to behave, then there is only one way that they can find out, and that is by misbehaving. So if you are upfront with them about your expectations, this is what I need. I need one voice. I need you to do as you're asked. If you explain that to them ahead of time, then when they're not doing it, it can be as simple as looking at them, not even saying anything, and that look says, we've already discussed this is my expectation, I need you to stop what you're doing and start to behave. If you want to learn about how different people manage behaviour and how that affects how the children behave, then honestly the best way you can possibly do it is to go and observe different classes. I remember when I was teaching in secondary, I once did a pupil shadow. Now, a pupil shadow is where you follow the same child round to 5 different lessons during the course of a day. And I followed this one child, and this child literally changed before my eyes, depending on how the teacher operated with the class. So my absolute best advice for you, if you want to learn how to do it, is to watch other people doing it. You can watch them doing it online as well. These days there are plenty of videos online that you could watch to see different styles, different ways of behaving with kids. And then from that, you develop your own style that works for you, because you can't be somebody else 5 days a week, 5 hours a day. It has to come from your own personality. Okay, so the kids are misbehaving. How does it feel inside? Well, the first thing you feel inside is you feel an absolute sense of complete and utter panic and terror, yeah? Especially with the slightly older ones, and with the tiny ones as well, to be honest. So the first thing you need to do is you need to get yourself under control. You need to breathe. You need to remember that, as somebody once said to me, even in your worst lesson, nobody died, okay? So first of all, breathe. Get yourself under control. Then choose a trusted child and say to them, I need you to go to the office and bring so-and-so, whoever is available, to come and help you out. Particularly if you're an NQT, if you're feeling that the class is getting unsafe, if the problems are becoming so large that you really don't know what to do, then my best advice is to send for somebody to support you. It's a funny question because, to be honest with you, one of my biggest sins when it comes to behaviour management is overexciting my children. So I would say that it's definitely not always about the kids being silent and still and calm. I think the most important thing is to be able to move the class from overexcitement to being calm, and from being calm to being excited and engaged and enthused by something. So it is absolutely not always about them being silent. And anyway, they're children. They are not going to spend 5 hours a day with you being completely still and quiet and silent. I think one of the key things I've learned is the ability to relax and to respond to what's actually happening in front of me in a less defensive way. So I think when you first go into teaching, what you'll find is that when the kids are misbehaving, you take it very personally, you think they're attacking me, and then you become defensive immediately. So you shout out at the class, or you overstate the case of what somebody's doing. This is awful what you're doing. Whereas over the years I've learned that actually, if I relax and I don't take myself too seriously, then the situation seems easier to handle somehow. These days I do a lot of inset training, so I'll go into schools and I'll be working with 100, 150 teachers. And often there will be one teacher at the back of the room who's decided to misbehave. And it's funny how exactly the same issues you have when you're working with children will arise. You will instantly focus on that person. You will instantly feel drawn towards dealing with them, when what you know deep down is actually what you should do is go, great, thanks for listening. Oh, thank you, that's a great idea. So focus on what's going well rather than being drawn towards the difficulties is the thing that I've learnt how to do.